It was a Wednesday night, the kind of night when everything feels off. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was working at a small 24-hour convenience store just off the highway in a town that felt like it should have been abandoned a long time ago. I took the night shift regularly, midnight to 8 a.m. The pay was decent, and to be honest, it was one of the few jobs I could find that didn't require a lot of human interaction. I had my routine: clean the store, stock the shelves, and wait for the occasional trucker or late-night wanderer to stop by. But that night, it felt different. From the moment I clocked in, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. There was no reason for it. Nothing had changed since the night before, and yet, there was this weight in the air. Maybe it was just the exhaustion. Maybe it was the flickering fluorescent lights that made everything seem a little off. Either way, I shoved it down and tried to focus on the tasks at hand. Around 1 a.m., the first strange thing happened. I was behind the counter, scrolling through my phone when the doorbell rang. I looked up, expecting a trucker, maybe a lost soul just passing through. But there was nothing. The door swung open, but no one walked in. I froze. The bell had rung, clear as day. I heard it, and the door had definitely moved. I stepped out from behind the counter and looked around. Nothing. I walked to the door and peeked outside. The parking lot was empty, the lights from the highway distant and muted by the mist rolling in. No cars, no people, nothing. I locked the door again, chalking it up to a gust of wind, but the unsettling feeling stayed. I tried to shake it off and went back to my phone. About an hour later, I heard it again. The bell, this time louder, more distinct. I didn't move immediately. I was hoping it was just a bug or a glitch in the system, but the bell kept ringing. It was driving me nuts. So, I grabbed the flashlight under the counter and walked to the door again. I swear to God, I don't know why I kept checking. It's like some sick part of me knew I was about to find something I didn't want to see. And then I saw it. The door was wide open again. And there, standing in the doorway, was a figure. It wasn't a man. It wasn't a woman. It wasn't anything human, really. It was tall, impossibly tall, with unnaturally long limbs. The only thing I could make out clearly was the shape of a face. A face that looked like it was carved out of marble. Smooth, white, with no eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just flat. I was frozen. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. It stood there watching me for what felt like hours, but in reality was probably only a few seconds. Then, without a sound, it stepped back into the darkness. The door swung shut. I was alone again. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know if I just imagined it, but everything in my body told me it was real. I locked the door, triple-checked the security cameras, and sat down at the counter, shaking. That's when the radio started. I hadn't touched it all night, but suddenly, there was a voice coming through the static, low and distorted, like it was fighting to get through. "You're next," it said. I grabbed the radio, turned the dial to a different station, but the voice followed. It was the same whispering words over and over. "You're next." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was happening. So I just sat there, wide-eyed, holding the radio in my hands, listening as it crackled and repeated those words, again and again. I glanced at the clock. It was 3 a.m. now. I still had hours to go before my shift ended. The air in the store felt thick, like the walls were closing in. Every little sound, every creak and groan of the building sounded louder, sharper. And then, through the buzzing of the radio, I heard something else, something far more unsettling. A tapping. It was coming from the back of the store, the aisle where the refrigerated goods were. It wasn't the normal sounds of the freezer kicking on and off. No, this was deliberate. Something or someone was tapping on the shelves. I grabbed the baseball bat behind the counter, more out of instinct than anything else, and made my way to the back. The closer I got, the more intense the tapping became. It was as if whatever was making the sound was trying to get my attention. When I reached the aisle, I stopped dead in my tracks. There, sitting on the floor, was a doll. It was small, porcelain, with cracked features and empty, hollow eyes. It was staring directly at me, and it was moving, tapping its tiny wooden fingers on the floor. I know what you're thinking. It's just a doll. But trust me, in that moment I swear it was alive. I didn't touch it. I didn't even want to go near it. But somehow I couldn't look away either. That's when the lights started to flicker again. The store felt like it was being pulled into some other dimension, and the only thing keeping me here was the overwhelming fear that if I left, something would follow me. But then, I heard the voice again. "You're next," it whispered. This time, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the doll, threw it into the back storage room, and slammed the door shut. As I did, I thought I heard a soft giggle, a child's laugh, but there was no child in sight. I backed away, my hands still shaking, my heart hammering in my chest. But then I heard something that made my blood run cold. The front doorbell. Again. This time I didn't check. I already knew it was coming for me, and that was just the beginning. The real nightmare hadn't even started yet. By the time I finally dared to move again, the store felt different, heavier, almost suffocating. It was as though the very air had thickened with something that shouldn't be there. The constant flickering of the lights above only made it worse. One moment, the place was bathed in harsh fluorescent light. The next, the shadows stretched across the floor like black fingers, creeping toward me. I didn't even know what I was doing anymore. I wasn't sure whether I was still waiting for the next customer to come in, or if I was just trying to keep myself busy to avoid losing my mind. I walked back behind the counter, hands still shaking, and tried to focus on anything other than the feeling of being watched. That's when I heard it. A voice. This one was different than the static whispers. It wasn't just a disembodied, distant noise. This was a real voice. A soft, guttural voice. Like someone was speaking from behind the walls, muffled but clear. "Come out," it said. "You know what you need to do." I froze. I knew it wasn't a customer. There hadn't been anyone in the store for over an hour. I slowly turned toward the aisles, half expecting to see something standing there. But there was nothing. The shelves were empty, save for the dull glow of the overhead lights casting long, stretching shadows on the floor. But then I saw it. Just at the end of the candy aisle, standing in the darkness, was a figure. I couldn't make out much of it at first. It was too dark, too far away, but it was definitely there. Tall, so tall it seemed to tower over the shelves. Its shape was vague at first, shifting with the shadows, but I could see something moving in the dark. Slowly, deliberately. Then it stepped forward and I could make out its face, or rather, the lack of one. It had the same featureless, blank expression as the thing I saw earlier. That white, smooth, lifeless face with no eyes, no mouth, just a blank canvas of skin. It wasn't human, that much was clear. But it was alive and it was watching me. I didn't know what it wanted, but I couldn't just stand there. My legs were like lead, but I forced myself to move. I backed up toward the counter, grabbing the baseball bat again, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Get out," I muttered under my breath, more to myself than to whatever was in the store with me. But it didn't move. It didn't flinch. It didn't even acknowledge me. It just stood there, waiting. I don't know how long I stared at it, but eventually, the creature took one slow, deliberate step forward. And then another. I swear, every time it moved, the lights flickered and dimmed, like it was draining the energy from the store. I was about to scream when I heard something else. A sound behind me, a rustle. I turned around. There, at the end of the refrigerated aisle, was another figure. It was shorter, but just as distorted. Its face was wrong, like it had been sewn together. The skin stretched unnaturally, pulling in places it shouldn't. And it was moving, slowly, deliberately, toward me, just like the first one. My heart raced. I couldn't take it anymore. I was out of options. The only thing I could do was run. I bolted for the back door, the emergency exit that led into the alley. I fumbled with the key, my hands slick with sweat, but before I could unlock it, I heard the doorbell ring again. A clanging sound that echoed through the store, almost like it was mocking me. I froze. The door wasn't supposed to be open. Couldn't be. But somehow it was. I turned around, my breath catching in my throat, and saw something that made my blood turn to ice. The tall figure, the thing, was standing right behind the counter now. right there in front of the door I was trying to escape from. And it wasn't alone. There were more of them now. At least 3, maybe 4, scattered throughout the aisles. They were moving slowly, deliberately, their featureless faces staring straight at me. But what truly chilled me was the sound. The scratching sound. It was coming from the walls. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but it got louder. Scratching, clawing, like something was trying to get out of the walls, trying to get in. I could feel it now, deep in my bones. Whatever was here, it wasn't just here to scare me. It was here to take something. The store felt like it was alive, like it was watching me, breathing with me, pulsing with the life of something ancient and malicious. I couldn't escape. The doors were locked and the windows were sealed. I was trapped. I turned around, looking for any way out, but the store was beginning to warp, to shift. The shelves were moving, just a little, like they were being pulled toward the walls, closing in around me. The lights were flickering more rapidly now, strobing in time with the scratching on the walls. I heard the voice again, clearer this time, the one that had been whispering through the radio earlier. "You're next," it said, louder, more insistent. But this time it wasn't just one voice. There were more, and they were coming from every direction. I started to back away, my pulse thundering in my ears, my whole body shaking. I wasn't sure if I could even breathe anymore. The air felt thick, suffocating. And then the worst part happened. The last thing I remember before everything went black was a cold hand gripping my shoulder. It was like ice, dead ice, the kind you'd feel if you were standing next to a frozen corpse. I couldn't turn around, couldn't scream, couldn't even move. All I could do was feel that thing behind me. And then, I don't know what happened next. I woke up on the floor behind the counter. The lights were on again. The store was eerily quiet. The figures were gone. The door was locked. The radio was silent. But it didn't feel right. None of it felt right. Something was still there. And the worst part? I knew it wasn't over. Whatever had been in that store, whatever I had seen, it wasn't finished with me yet. But that's a story for later. Because this nightmare, it was just beginning. I don't know how long I lay there, just staring at the cold tile floor, trying to convince myself that what had happened wasn't real, that it was just some weird, twisted nightmare. But I knew it wasn't. The weight in the air, the chill on my skin, the silence that stretched out like an omen. Everything told me I had just barely escaped something far worse than I could ever understand. When I finally gathered the strength to get up, my body felt heavy, sluggish, like I'd been drugged. My legs wobbled as I stood, but I made my way to the back storage room where I had thrown that cursed doll. I had to get rid of it. I couldn't leave it there, not after everything that had happened. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the broom, sweeping aside the clutter, trying to open the door. The air inside the room was different, stale, thick with the scent of dust and something sour. I paused. I didn't want to open it. Part of me, the smart part, was telling me to leave it, to walk out of the store and never look back. But I couldn't. I had to know. I swung the door open with a quick motion, the hinges creaking as they reluctantly gave way. The storage room was empty. No doll. No shadows creeping across the floor. Just boxes and old cleaning supplies scattered around, as it should have been. Except, there was something on the floor. A trail of red. My breath hitched. I stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a stack of boxes. It wasn't blood, it couldn't have been. But it looked like blood. The deep, dark crimson spread across the floor in slow, deliberate splotches, like someone or something had dragged itself through the room. The trail led to the back corner, and I didn't need to look to know what was there. The doll. It was sitting there, right in the corner, its cracked porcelain face staring straight at me. Its small, empty eyes were now filled with something that looked suspiciously like tears. Not tears of any kind of human emotion, but something far worse. Something dark, like the doll was mourning. The price for disturbing it. I backed away, stumbling toward the door, but then I heard the same voice again. Only this time it was clear, sharp, like a blade cutting through the air. "You shouldn't have done that," it said. I turned, but there was nothing. Not even the doll. It had disappeared. My head was spinning now. This wasn't a joke anymore. Whatever it was, it had been waiting for me to make a mistake, to reach too far into something that should have been left alone. The store was silent, too silent. I felt something wrong again, something crawling at the edges of my consciousness, whispering that this was far from over, that whatever I had brought into the world was still lurking, still waiting for me to mess up again. And I was about to. The doorbell rang. The real doorbell this time, the one that I knew for sure wasn't malfunctioning. I froze. I had to check. I couldn't just leave it like this. I couldn't let them think they had one. I grabbed the bat again. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat, my head buzzing, but I couldn't back down. I was trapped in this nightmare, and I knew I had to face it, or it would follow me for the rest of my life. The bell rang again, louder this time, impatient, almost angry. I didn't wait another second. I forced myself to walk toward the front of the store, each step like a drumbeat in my chest. When I reached the door, I could barely bring myself to look through the window, but I did, and what I saw made the blood drain from my face. There were people outside. Too many people. At least a dozen, maybe more. They were all standing in front of the store, staring. But they weren't ordinary people. They had faces, yes, but their eyes, they were all wrong. Empty. Hollow. Like they had been scooped out, like someone had erased every trace of humanity. They were dressed in normal clothes, jeans, jackets, hats, but their movements were stiff, mechanical. And then I saw something that made my stomach drop. They weren't alone. Behind them, in the shadowy alley, there were others. I couldn't make them out at first, but the longer I looked, the clearer it became. There were more figures standing, waiting, and I could see now they didn't have faces either. I turned and backed away from the door, but it was already too late. The thing inside the store, the one with the featureless face, was standing in front of me, in the middle of the aisle, just a few feet away. It had moved so quietly that I hadn't heard it, but now that it was standing there, its presence filled the room. The walls seemed to close in, the air grew thick, and the temperature dropped. Its body was unnatural, bending and twisting at odd angles, like it was straining to stay upright. The more I looked at it, the more I realized it wasn't just its face that was wrong. It was its whole form. The limbs were too long, the fingers too thin. It was as if it were stretched too far, too thin. I could feel the air crackling around it, like the room itself was warping to accommodate this thing. I tried to run. I turned to sprint toward the back door, but the instant I moved, the lights flickered again. This time so violently I thought they might explode. The thing was right there, standing in front of me again. This time, its head tilted to the side, its featureless face close enough that I could feel the cold radiating off of it. "You're not leaving," it whispered. The voice echoed, not just in my ears, but in my mind. So loud it felt like my skull might crack open. I stumbled backward, tripping over a box, my heart racing, blood rushing in my ears. And then everything went black. When I woke up, the store was empty again. The figures were gone. The door was locked. The doll, it was gone too. I didn't know what had just happened, or if I had just imagined it all. I didn't know if I was still dreaming, or if the world outside was just as twisted as the one I had just left. But I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it wasn't finished with me. Because something about this place, it wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and it had just claimed its next victim. I'm not sure if I can fully explain what happened after that. Everything was a blur. I don't remember leaving the store that night, or if I even did leave. My mind was in a haze, and I couldn't make sense of anything anymore. Every shadow seemed to whisper my name. Every sound felt like a warning. I don't know how I made it home, but I remember waking up the next morning in my bed, drenched in sweat, the faintest smell of mildew and decay clinging to my skin. It was daylight outside, thank God, but even the sun didn't feel safe anymore. The world felt different, too quiet, too still. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. I mean, it was me, of course it was. Same tired eyes, same messy hair. But something about the face felt wrong, like a mask that had been stretched too tight. I felt like I didn't belong in my own skin anymore. My heart thudded in my chest, and I had to step back, afraid that something in the mirror would change. And then it did. The reflection blinked. I swear to God, it blinked. My breath caught in my throat, and I stumbled back, knocking over a bottle of shampoo. But the figure in the mirror just stared at me. Its lips didn't move, but I heard the words in my head, "You can't escape." I slammed my eyes shut, took a deep breath, and when I opened them again, the mirror was normal. The reflection was still mine, my own face, but I didn't trust it. I didn't trust anything anymore. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't stay in that apartment. Hell, I couldn't stay in that town. I didn't care what happened. I just needed to get out of there. So I threw on my clothes, grabbed my car keys, and left. As soon as I stepped outside, I felt that familiar weight pressing down on me again. The air was thick, too thick, and my skin crawled. The town was as quiet as it had been the night before, like the world had frozen in time. As I passed the gas station on my way out, I saw a figure standing near the pumps. A woman, no, not a woman, just a shape like someone trying to look human. She was staring at me, but her face was hidden in shadow, her body completely still. I knew better than to stop, so I didn't. I drove. I drove until the town was far behind me, until the roads stretched out into the wilderness. The trees seemed to whisper as I passed, their branches swaying like they were alive. But I couldn't go back. I couldn't let whatever was chasing me find me again. Not like this. I pulled off onto a small dirt road that led to an old, abandoned motel. It looked like something out of a bad horror movie. Rusted signs, broken windows, peeling paint. But it was isolated, quiet, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I could breathe again. I parked my car, grabbed my bag, and went inside. The lobby was dark, lit only by a single flickering light above the desk. The receptionist, a man with too many wrinkles and too few teeth, barely looked up as I entered. He was muttering something under his breath, and I couldn't quite catch it, but it didn't matter. I just needed a bed. I signed in, took the key, and went to my room. The door creaked as I opened it, and I immediately felt the cold air wash over me. The room was small, cramped, with faded wallpaper and an old mattress. But it was clean enough, and for once, I felt like I could relax. I collapsed onto the bed, letting the exhaustion wash over me. The pillow was scratchy against my face, but I didn't care. I was just so tired. Tired of running, tired of everything. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I finally fell into a deep sleep. But it didn't last. I woke up to the sound of someone whispering my name. At first, I thought it was a dream, but when I opened my eyes, the room was just as dark as before. The whispering continued, growing louder, more frantic. My heart pounded in my chest, and I sat up, trying to make sense of what was happening. The room was empty. There was no one there, but the whispering was unmistakable. It was coming from inside the room. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to look. I stood up, my legs still shaky from the night before. The floor creaked beneath my feet as I walked to the mirror above the sink. And there, staring back at me, was the thing with the featureless face. It was standing behind me. I didn't move, couldn't. My body was frozen in place, my skin ice cold. The figure was taller than I remembered, towering over me. I could see the strange, unnatural angles of its body, the elongated arms, the way its limbs twisted as if they weren't meant to bend that way. And its face. Oh God, its face. It was closer now. So close I could feel its cold breath on the back of my neck. "You're not leaving," it whispered again, its voice too loud, too real. It didn't just echo in my ears. It echoed in my mind, rattling my thoughts. I spun around, expecting to face it head on, but there was nothing there. The room was empty. The mirror was just a mirror, but I could still hear it. The whispering, louder now, a chorus of voices, all different, all overlapping, but one voice stood out. "You've been marked," it said, the words filling my head like a bomb ready to explode. "You belong to us now." I backed away, my hands shaking, my heart in my throat. I didn't know how it had followed me. I didn't know how it knew where I was. But I couldn't escape anymore. The door slammed shut. The walls seemed to close in around me. I could feel the cold creeping in again. That sickening presence pushing against me from every direction. The mirror shattered. And that's when I understood. Whatever was coming after me, it didn't need to follow me through doors or windows. It didn't need to be seen. It had already marked me. And it was inside me now. The room went black, the darkness consuming me. And the last thing I remember hearing was the faint sound of that same whisper, growing louder and louder, until it was the only thing left in the world. You can never escape. I woke up hours later, back in the convenience store. The store I thought I had left behind. The air was thick, suffocating, and the walls felt like they were closing in again. I was no longer sure what was real. All I knew was that it wasn't over, and it was only getting worse. Whatever had found me in the mirror, whatever had followed me, it wasn't finished with me yet. And now I had no choice but to face it. When I came to, I wasn't in the motel room anymore. The first thing I noticed was the cold, the unbearable chill that seemed to seep into my bones. My teeth were chattering, but it wasn't just from the temperature. The cold felt wrong, like it was unnatural. I felt like I had been plunged into some abyss, like I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. I looked around, disoriented, and it took me a few seconds to recognize where I was. It was the convenience store, but it was different. The shelves were toppled, the aisles full of shattered glass and broken bottles. The walls had deep cracks running through them, as if the very foundation of the building was slowly crumbling. The lights were flickering again, but this time, they buzzed violently, like they were struggling to stay on. The place smelled like mildew and something rotten, something that made my stomach turn. I couldn't make sense of it. I didn't know how I had ended up back here, how I had gotten back to this hellhole. I had left, I had escaped, and yet here I was again. I looked at my hands, still trembling, wondering if I had dreamed all of it, wondering if maybe I was just imagining things. But no, I knew better. I could feel it in my skin, in my soul. This place was still alive, and it wasn't finished with me yet. As I stood there, struggling to make sense of it all, I heard something, a sound, footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, echoing through the darkened aisles. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribcage, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up straight. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination. It had to be. There was no one here, right? The store was empty, but the sound kept coming closer, growing louder, the footsteps heavier. Someone or something was in the store with me. I looked toward the source of the noise. It was coming from the back of the store, near the aisles where the freezers were. I couldn't see anyone, but I could feel the presence. It was there, hidden in the shadows, watching me. I moved toward the counter, my pulse thundering in my ears. My eyes kept flicking toward the back of the store, but I couldn't take my gaze off the counter. The register was still there, but there was something else, something I hadn't noticed before. A note. It was sitting on the counter, an old, crumpled piece of paper, just waiting for me. I couldn't help myself. I picked it up, my fingers trembling as I unfolded it. The words were written in a hurried, jagged scrawl, as if the person who had written them had been shaking with fear. "You shouldn't have come back." I dropped the note as if it had burned me. What the hell was going on? Who wrote this? How did they know? The footsteps were closer now, right behind me. I whipped around, my heart nearly leaping out of my chest. But there was no one there. The aisles were empty. The store was as still as a tomb. But I could feel it. I could feel the eyes watching me from the shadows, the heavy presence that was closer than I wanted it to be. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure standing just beyond the shelves. It was tall, impossibly tall, its long, spindly limbs bending unnaturally. It was hunched like it was trying to shrink itself down, but still it towered over everything. The same featureless face, the same blank, empty expression. It was just standing there, not moving, not making a sound, just watching. Couldn't breathe. I wanted to run, to scream, but my body refused to obey. And then it moved. It was so fast, so sudden, that I didn't even have time to react. One second, it was standing still, and the next, it was right in front of me. Its long fingers, too long, too thin, reached for me, and in that moment I understood. I understood what it was. It wasn't just here to scare me. It wasn't just haunting this place. It was feeding on my fear, on my dread, on the fact that I couldn't escape. I felt its cold, clammy fingers wrap around my wrist, and in that moment, everything changed. The lights above flickered violently, and the walls seemed to bend inward, pressing on me from every side. I could hear the air move, the sound of something breathing, something large and ancient, coming from all directions. It was inside my head, its voice scraping against my mind like sandpaper. "You're ours now," it whispered. "You can never leave." The words felt like they were tearing through my skull. The creature's grip tightened, pulling me closer, but it wasn't just physical. It was like it was pulling me into the shadows with it, into the darkness that had consumed the store. I felt the world around me warp, stretch, twist, and then I saw it. A door. Not the front door, not the back exit, but a door in the far corner of the store, half hidden behind boxes and crates. The moment I saw it, I knew what it was. It was the only way out. I wrenched myself free from the creature's grip, ignoring the sharp pain that shot up my arm. I ran for the door, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could feel the thing behind me, hear it moving, feel it coming for me. But I didn't stop, couldn't stop. I reached the door. I didn't know if it would open, but I yanked on the handle with all the strength I had left. To my surprise, it gave. The door swung open, and a blinding light poured through. A light I hadn't seen in what felt like forever. I stepped through, into the light, not knowing where it led, only knowing that it had to be better than the darkness behind me. But as the door slammed shut behind me, I heard something. A laugh. A deep, hollow laugh that echoed from the depths of the store. It wasn't just one voice. It was a chorus, all of them laughing, all of them waiting. And that's when I realized the truth. I hadn't escaped. I had only traded one nightmare for another. Because the thing inside that store, the one with the empty face, it wasn't just a ghost. It wasn't just a thing. It was the store itself. And it was alive. And no matter where I went, it would always be following me. Because once you've been marked, you never leave. I don't know how long I wandered after I left that place. I wasn't sure where I was, or even who I was anymore. My mind was unraveling, each thread of thought slipping through my fingers like sand. The feeling of being watched, no, hunted, was constant, gnawing at the edges of my mind. It didn't matter where I went. It didn't matter if I ran or hid. That thing, that store, it was always there, waiting, watching. At night, it came to me in my dreams. Not just the faceless creatures, but the store itself. The shelves, the broken glass, the humming lights. It was alive. The store was the thing, and it had always been the thing. All I had ever done was walk into its trap. And then I started to see it. In places I couldn't explain. I saw it in reflections. In windows of passing cars. In mirrors always just behind me. The face, that face, the empty white face, was always there. Watching. It was everywhere. But the worst part was that it was inside me. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it. I felt the store calling me, pulling at me from the inside. I could hear the whispers now, louder than before. "You belong to us. We're waiting." The worst part was that I couldn't tell anyone. I couldn't make them understand. I went to the police. I tried to explain, but they just thought I was crazy. They didn't see it. They didn't see the way the world shifted, the way the store warped into something else entirely when I wasn't looking. The police thought I was a runaway, a lost soul desperate for attention. They never understood that it wasn't just me. It was everyone, and it was coming for all of us. I don't know what drove me back there that night. Maybe it was the fact that I couldn't run anymore, or maybe I had just accepted that I was already doomed. But I found myself standing in front of the convenience store again, staring at the cracked windows, the flickering sign. The air was thick, humid, almost suffocating. The store was calling me, the door beckoning me like a mouth ready to swallow me whole. And I went inside. I knew what I had to do. The only way out of this nightmare was to end it. I didn't know if I could survive, but I had to try. I wasn't going to let it claim anyone else. The moment I stepped through the door, I felt it. The weight, the cold. It was all back. The walls were even more cracked than before, and the shelves were filled with strange, unfamiliar items. The air was thick with dust and mildew, the smell of decay more pungent than I had ever experienced. And there, at the far end of the store, was the thing, the creature with the blank, featureless face. It was waiting for me. "You've come back," it whispered, its voice so deep I felt it in my chest. "You've always been ours." I knew this was it, the final confrontation. I wasn't going to be its victim anymore. I wasn't going to let it consume me like it had consumed everyone else. But I was scared. So scared. I walked forward, my legs trembling beneath me, and I heard it, the voice, filling my head, pushing me to run, to hide, to leave. But I ignored it. Couldn't run. Not anymore. I stopped right in front of the counter. Behind it, the cashier's register was covered in a thick layer of dust, and the flickering light above cast strange shadows across the room. The thing was standing there, its limbs twisted and long, its blank face staring into mine, knowing. It reached out for me and I couldn't move. But then, just as its fingers brushed against my skin, I did something I didn't think I had the strength to do. I screamed. I screamed at the top of my lungs, pushing every ounce of terror and pain I had into that one primal sound. I wasn't screaming for help. I was screaming for freedom, for release, for an end to the thing that had stalked me, haunted me, broken me. And I felt it. The moment the scream left my body, something cracked, something snapped. The thing wavered. For the first time, it seemed to falter. The lights above flickered wildly, buzzing like a swarm of angry bees, and the store itself seemed to shudder, like it was alive and struggling. It was trying to hold on, but it was weakening. I could feel it. I could feel it falling apart. The voice in my head grew louder, more desperate, more furious. "You can't escape," it screamed. "You belong here." But I didn't belong here. I never did. I grabbed the baseball bat that had always been behind the counter, the one I had used so many times before. With a single, powerful swing, I smashed the register. The impact rang out through the store like thunder, and as the machine cracked open, something began to bleed out of it. A black, viscous substance. Thick, dark, like oil, but something worse. It oozed out of the broken register, creeping across the floor like it was alive. I watched in horror as the liquid spread, consuming everything it touched. The shelves, the walls, even the floor itself. It was eating the store alive. I turned and ran. I ran as fast as I could, the sound of the store collapsing behind me. The whispers in my head, the thing's voice, were growing fainter, more distant. I reached the door. I didn't look back. The moment I stepped outside, the world changed. The fog that had always clung to the edges of my vision lifted. The air felt lighter, like the weight had been lifted from my chest. The sun was shining brighter than it had in days, and I could breathe again. I stumbled away from the store, my legs barely able to hold me. And when I looked back, the convenience store was gone. Not burned down, not destroyed, but gone. Like it had never existed. There was nothing left but an empty parking lot, and the road leading into the town. The thing inside had died. The store had finally crumbled. I had survived. But I knew one thing. I wasn't the same person who had walked into that place. The thing inside had marked me, and no matter how far I ran, no matter how hard I tried to forget, I knew that something was still with me. I wasn't sure if I would ever truly escape it. I wasn't sure if the nightmare had ended. But as I walked away, I could still feel the eyes on me. The unseen eyes watching, waiting. And I couldn't help but wonder, was the store really gone? Or was it just waiting for me to come back?